excited and stoked as we are. When we were thinking about doing a next-gen HackerCon, we kind of landed on this mission statement, which was empowering and bringing hackers together across industries to do cool shit. Empowering, given our lack of power right now, is kind of a funny thing. But it's a two-part thing, right? We're bringing people across industries. There's people here from all parts of the hacker community, and we're going to do a bunch of really cool content. We have the Village of Villages exhibition. We have so many of the wonderful villages who have come out and each brought themselves a challenge. We have a TTX later today. After my talk, all the people who are TTX attendees should exit that way. And that's all designed to bring people together. And then the second part of this is doing cool shit. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm so stoked to be at cons because I know that this community of people are some of the most passionate, intelligent, driven, capable people that I will ever know. And so this is about empowering you guys and bringing you together to be able to show DC, show the rest of the community how we can do so much good when given the right resources to, fuck shit up for good, right? And so a lot of our content is about that. We have some of the most amazing talks today and tomorrow from the US and internationally. We have Halvar giving the closing tonight, and then Nakasone giving the opening tomorrow, as well as some incredible technical talks from the community. We also have a couple of policy roundtables, and those ideas from the roundtables all came from you when you signed up. And instead of having DC people come in and give a couple of talking points and then leave, we're actually having the ideas sourced from you and you talking to the policymakers so they can bring stuff back and actually do things the right way, we hope. And the last thing that I want to talk about, if y'all don't know, we have a really great competition, our flagship contest tomorrow called Junkyard. And this contest was developed and created by Sophia D'Antoine, who's sadly no longer with us, but this was her brainchild. And it's about, bringing together the community and hacking stuff and not taking ourselves so seriously. That's why a lot of the devices there, all of them are end-of-life devices. Really recommend that you guys go check that out. We've got some real ringers in one of the categories that we're giving out bounties for, which is Best Meme Target. None of the targets are announced in the pamphlet, but will be announced live on stage, so really encourage you guys to check it out. We have a couple of logistical things that I will bring up my wonderful deputy director, our district con COO, Sarah Powazik, to discuss. So I'll bring that and bring her on stage, so please give her a warm welcome too.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Powazik, I'm the Deputy Director. It's so good to see you all. I think it's a full house, but it could also be empty and I would have no idea. It's truly pitch black in here. Thank you all for coming. I was supposed to get up here and give you a speech about not destroying shit and being nice to the hotel, but somebody beat us to the punch. I don't know who burned an Ode to knock the power out of the entire block. No thank you, please don't do that next year. But thank you all for coming. I'll just keep this short. I know that hackers are amazing. We like to fuck shit up. We're happy to have you here. If you can, please destroy our stuff and not the hotel's stuff so that we don't get sued. And we did put our values out there on the stage. Above all else, be kind, create meaningful connections, collaborate in good faith, and be bold. That really is what we founded the entire conference around. So if you guys have any problems, if you have any concerns, please come find me or find another one of our crew. Our organizers are in these big jackets. Our volunteers are wearing these shirts that say, "Don't panic, please listen to that advice." Come and find one of us, ask for the trust and safety team. We're here to make sure that you guys have a good time and a good experience here. And again, if you must googly eye something, please googly eye our posters that we will throw out after this con and not the hotel. And hopefully we'll get the power back on, but if not, welcome to Sleepaway Camp. And I'll hand it back over to Winona to kick off our first talk.
My distinct pleasure to kick off our opening CFP and our opening talks today. I can't wait to introduce y'all to Christine and Bill. They are speaking on Sweet Quadreams or Nightmare Before Christmas, Dissecting an iOS Ode. Christine is a senior mobile security researcher at Microsoft who analyzes iOS Ode for a living and runs the Her Hacks podcast. She is the best. And then Bill is a security security, a senior researcher at the Citizen Lab whose work on Finfisher, NSO, and Sidetracks has basically been the impetus of a lot of actions against companies in this space. So please give them a big, warm welcome. Christine and Bill, please give it a
I have to say, I have some concerns about this. Okay, good. We're very different heights, so we can't share a microphone. All right. So everybody's done. All right. Thank you, Winona, for that introduction. So again, my name is Christine. So before we jump into it, while everyone's getting settled down, just a note about our talk. So we're talking about an attack from 2021. So sorry we're not dropping any CVEs on stage because we do like to participate in responsible disclosure, meaning that Apple has fully patched this exploit and the vulnerabilities that we're talking about. So sorry if anyone's disappointed, but that's how we like to roll at Microsoft and Citizen Lab. So a little bit about me. I am a researcher at Microsoft. I work on a lot of different things. In addition to reverse engineering nation-state malware with Mystic, I also contribute to the Defender for Mobile product, which is just an app that you put on your Android or iOS device. Additionally, I've actually contributed to some features for Security Copilot. So there's a really awesome tool called File Analyzer that will automatically analyze malware using LLMs. And also check out my podcast, Her Hacks Podcast. It's everywhere you listen to content. It's a podcast by Women in Cybersecurity for everyone.
Hi everyone. Let's see if we can turn this on. Okay, let's switch on there. Hi everyone. I'm trying my best to juggle these two mics here. So I am Bill Marzak. I work at the Citizen Lab, based at the University of Toronto. Though fortunately I'm based here in the United States, so I don't have to deal with the brutal Canadian winters. And I'm not talking about the 51st state of Canada, I'm actually based in California. Anyway, so the Citizen Lab does a variety of work in different fields, mainly at the intersection of internet freedom and human rights. So where I work is in the sub-area of targeted threats, specifically on the topic of mercenary spyware, which we'll get to in a little bit. You might be familiar with some of the Citizen Lab's research digging into companies, spyware companies such as NSO Group and their Pegasus spyware, Quadream, which we're talking about today, Sidetracks and Predator, their Predator spyware, as well as Kangaroo and their spyware. It's a big industry. You might have also seen some of our recent work with Meta digging into Paragon, a new company in this space, and our work looking at some USB restricted mode issues recently. But let's talk about iPhones. So if you're a threat actor and your desire is to hack or spy on someone's iPhone, obviously there has to be some initial access vector to get on their phone. So way back in the day, when we first started digging into mobile spyware, around about 2016, we saw cases, mostly cases, of individuals receiving text messages. Like this case here of a text message sent to an activist in the UAE, Ahmed Mansour, which promises in Arabic new secrets about torture in prisons in the UAE. So he's a human rights activist, unfortunately in prison at the moment for social media posts. But he received this, and to a normal human rights activist, perhaps this would seem interesting information, although perhaps a little strange to get from an unsolicited info SMS number, as you can see there. But this was sort of what we were seeing mostly back in the day in 2016 or so, right? This idea that you socially engineer a target into clicking on a dodgy link to a website you control, and then you deploy whatever CVE, WebKit CVE of the week against them to compromise their device, coupled with privilege escalation, and ultimately running a spyware process on the victim's device. So this was sort of how things were way back in the day. Of course, more recently, we've been seeing so-called zero-click techniques more and more often. So the first major one of these that we were involved in at the Citizen Lab was back in 2021 with the so-called forced entry exploit that NSO Group was using to deploy Pegasus onto targets' phones. So this was actually pretty clever. Google Project Zero has a nice write-up of the technique. Essentially, the hackers were able to build a virtual CPU in the JPEG2 decoder for PDFs. Pretty clever technique. And they also found a code path, which, an unsandboxed PDF decoded code path in iMessage. More recently, we've seen the trend continue. Of course, in 2023, there was the famous WebP exploit, again used to deploy Pegasus via iMessage onto targets' phones. And of course, who could forget the Kaspersky Lab Operation Triangulation Report, another famous zero-click case directed at iPhones. But before we go any further, we've been throwing around these terms, zero-click, zero-day. I want to let my colleague, Christine, here define them.
All right, so just to level set with everybody, I'm going to talk about the difference between a zero-click and zero-day. You can imagine a zero-click exploit is a subset of zero-day, but not all zero-days are zero-click. So a zero-day is an exploited vulnerability for which there's no patch available when we see it exploited in the wild. So a great example of this was the first exploit that Bill talked about, somebody getting a text message in any CVE that's usually referencing some type of zero-day attack. However, a zero-click is a remote vulnerability, which requires no user interaction, no clicking. So the latter three exploits that he discussed were automatically exploiting the device without the user even knowing that it happened. And this is because zero-clicks are focusing on some type of payload parsing. So the end device is going to process that payload and the exploit will be delivered without any user interaction. And so the exploit that we're talking about today that we're going to get to is actually both a zero-day and zero-click exploit. So iMessage in particular has been a popular target of zero-day, zero-clicks, and that's because it has a feature-rich attack surface. So there's so many things that you can send via iMessage. You can send PDFs, you can send content cards, you can send GIFs, you can send videos, and so this has become a very popular attack surface, particularly by NSO Group and some of these other nation states. So Apple kind of got wise to this and said, we are going to lock down iMessage. We are tired of people targeting it. And so they actually built a sandbox called Blastdoor.
So this takes us up to iOS 14, way back in the day of, I guess, 2021, when iOS 14 was mainstream. Apple had introduced this feature called Blastdoor. Now, Blastdoor, for those of you who are familiar, is a sandbox written in Swift, Apple's, I guess, memory-safe language, which tries to isolate or minimize the interface between any sort of complex decoding processes involved in processing an iMessage and the rest of the system. So, in particular, one very juicy component of iMessage that was attacked over and over was IM transcoder agent, which, as you might imagine, is responsible for transcoding, various attachments, formats into other formats, images, like with Apple's Image.io library. It's sort of a kitchen sink of at least a dozen different formats, including some legacy or older code. So it's definitely something that threat actors take a very close look at. And Apple, obviously realizing this, instituted a sandbox to try and mitigate some of this. So anytime, right, you have a sandbox, there's the old adage, show me a 10-foot sandbox, I'll show you an 11-foot sandbox escape. So there's sort of multiple ways you can look at this, right? So we saw, in response to Blastdoor, threat actors like NSO trying to attack or circumvent Blastdoor. So either Blastdoor sandbox escapes, like we saw in 2023, or simply finding a code path that is not Blastdoor, like forced entry. But the threat actor we're going to be talking about today did something a little bit more clever, right? They said, well, to heck with iMessage. We're not going to focus on that. We're going to find some other juicy zero-click attack surface on the device.
So we're going to get into the story of not only how we discovered this exploit, analyzed it, reverse engineered it, but also how we were able to shut down a threat actor for good. So starting with the discovery of the attack. Anytime you're doing any type of mobile reverse engineering, you kind of have two options that you can start with. So the first option would be a top-down analysis, and this is when you have the sample. So reverse engineers like me usually start with a sample, and we're going to reverse engineer it using like IDA or Ghidra to do some kind of static analysis. Then you're going to want to detonate the sample and see really what it does. So you can use something like Frida. But what I'll do is I'll detonate the sample and then see like, is there anything that was left behind? Did it try to write to certain files? And what artifacts are left over on the device? Conversely, if you don't have a sample, maybe you're like Citizen Lab and you're starting with a potentially infected victim device, you're going to do a forensic analysis on the phone, which means that you will get some type of forensic dump and analyze that dump to see, is there anything weird going on that's kind of outside of the norm? Is there what's called an implausible artifact? And by looking through these logs, this is how Citizen Lab actually is able to detect unknown spyware.
Great. So Christine mentioned, I guess our video cut out there a little bit.
Oh no.
Maybe jiggle the connector and see if we can, or is this a generator fail?
On it, one second.
Okay. Well, so to further Christine's point about implausible artifacts, and while we're waiting for the screen to come back on, an implausible artifact we define as something which would not exist on the phone, whether it be a certain evidence that something is run from a certain directory, evidence indicating that a process is consuming data when it's not supposed to be. Something like that would really only be explained by the presence of some sort of, or the idea that the phone was exploited and infected with some sort of spyware. So the examples on the slides, which you can't see, are, what an example would be evidence that a binary on an iPhone was run from this directory, which back in the day was very popular with threat actors, private var, DB, COM, Apple, XPC, rollup staging, normally used for iOS updates and things like developer mode, but had some permissions reasons and other reasons why threat actors would want to choose that directory to execute out of. I saw some flashes. Anyway, also evidence that a process ran from /tmp. Nothing should be run from /tmp, but again, pretty popular with threat actors because on the iPhone, /tmp is not persisted across reboots. And it's a nice place where if you're trying to use or deploy your spyware in a way that you don't want it to be captured, you might gravitate towards directories like /tmp. Or in the case of Kaspersky's Operation Triangulation report, one of the implausible artifacts they noted in their analysis was the name of a process called backup agent, which was logged as consuming mobile data. Ooh, here we go. Okay, let me pop into the iOS display settings here and recalibrate this. Troubleshooting the production area.
The top right thing says mirror.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, enough again. No.
I broke it when I clicked advanced. That's what that explains.
Well, okay. Makes sense, right? So, examples of implausible artifacts, right? The rule can be staging directory, binaries running from /tmp, processes like a backup agent that are not supposed to consume mobile data, seem consuming mobile data. And one sort of side note to this idea, right, is this notion of implausible artifacts and the way that I sketched it assumes a particular attack model, which is that the attacker's ultimate goal is to launch their own spyware process, which conducts privileged actions in a way that might be logged on the device. However, there are other models, like what we've seen with reports about Paragon and their spyware, targeting the report, the way Paragon portrays their spyware in the media is that it sort of only exists within the confines of a certain chat app that is being targeted, rather than necessarily escalating and getting everything from the
Somehow getting worse.
Yeah.
Wait, it's power fluctuation.
Is mine right?
When people use the elevator, it draws too much power. Is it back?
Test.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Audio is good. That's a positive development.
It should be coming on in a second.
Yeah, so how do we use implausible artifacts? So one of the things that we do at the Citizen Lab is we work and liaise with civil society, meaning dissidents, journalists, opposition politicians, these sorts of types of people. And we might offer journalists, for instance, an opportunity to get their phone checked. And we might look at some output, forensic output of their phone, and look to see if there's any of these implausible artifacts. So we were doing checking back in 2021, and we saw a number of devices that had a particular suspicious, implausible path on them. And I hope that we get the projector back so to you. But if I can show it to you. It is a path within this private VARDB XPC Roller Campy staging directory, a process by the name of subbridged, which is a legitimate process on iOS, but it should never be run from that directory. The legitimate version should never be run from that directory. Furthermore, the phone is a negative for Pegasus and other types of spyware that we look for. So it was kind of pretty clear to us at this point that we were looking at a new threat actor.
So Citizen Lab had found this malicious IOC on a potentially infected device, but they didn't really know where it came from. Meanwhile, at Microsoft Threat Intelligence is constantly tracking in the wild threats with the Microsoft taxonomy, which you do not see here, but that's the storm, sleet, tsunami, snow, rain, all that. So that's how we track threat actors in the wild. And so what ended up happening was Microsoft had received a sample from a partner that actually had that same private var DB role account D staging subbridge D string. So we had an exact match to the string that Citizen Lab had. In our sample, it was like a heavily obfuscated string that upon initial static analysis, we had to deobfuscate. So it was really, really cool because we were like, hey, we have an IOC that's actually tied to a known threat actor, and Citizen Lab had a victim device that had been targeted by that same string, so or that that showed that same IOC.
Thor, you just move.